You've been lied to. Your whole life, people told you your sensitivity was a gift. They said you were compassionate, patient, intuitive. They praised you for being the one who always understood, the one who always cared, the one who always said yes. But here's the truth Carl Jung uncovered. That gift wasn't a gift at all. It was a wound. You didn't become sensitive because the world celebrated you. You became sensitive because it wasn't safe not to. Think about that. From childhood, you were trained to scan the room before you scanned yourself. You read the silences. You felt the storms before they broke. You adjusted. You bent. You erased yourself because love felt conditional. And so your so-called gift of empathy was really a survival strategy, a way to keep yourself safe. And what happens when you live your whole life like this? You end up carrying the emotional weight of everyone around you. You become the emotional sponge, the peacekeeper, the one who sacrifices your truth so others feel comfortable. It's exhausting. It's suffocating. And deep down, you know it's unsustainable, because Jung discovered something no one wants to admit. When the empath stops pleasing everyone, they don't become selfish. They become dangerous. Dangerous to the systems, the people, and the patterns that profit from their endless giving. This is the journey you're about to take. From people pleaser to sovereign self. From the mirror of others' needs to the truth of your own being. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. So let's begin. You've heard the story 1,000 times. Being sensitive is a blessing. That you were born with a special intuition, a divine gift that allows you to feel more deeply than others. But here's the lie. Jung's work shows us that most empaths aren't born that way. They're forged. Forged not from light, but from necessity. A child becomes empathic not because their spirit was celebrated, but because they had to read the unspoken in order to survive. In an unstable environment, they learned to detect danger before it exploded, to feel the tremor in someone's voice before the words were spoken, to soothe, to serve, to sacrifice, because that was the only way love stayed in the room. So, what the world praises in the empath, compassion, patience, intuition, is often the residue of an invisible wound. And that wound has a name, the wound of self-erasure. Think about your own life. How many times have you smiled when you wanted to scream? How many times have you said yes when your whole body begged you to say no? How many times have you absorbed other people's chaos while burying your own? This is what Jung meant when he described individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are. Because you can't become yourself if your entire identity has been built on managing everyone else's emotions. The empath's gift of feeling everything isn't really a gift. It's survival sensitivity. It's trauma disguised as compassion. It's a nervous system wired for hypervigilance. And Jung saw this pattern over and over again. He wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But empaths cannot become who they truly are until they recognize this truth. Their identity was built on a lie. Here's the harsh reality. Sensitivity didn't save you. Erasing yourself did. You learned that love meant pleasing others, that safety meant silence, that value meant usefulness, and so you became the mirror without a frame reflecting everyone else, while never being seen yourself. But let me tell you the deeper truth. What once kept you safe is now keeping you trapped. Because you don't know who you are without other people's feelings. You've built your sense of self entirely on your ability to manage someone else's storm. And that's why you feel empty. That's why you feel drained. That's why no matter how much you give, it never feels enough. This is the empath's illusion. That if you just give a little more, if you just love a little harder, if you just erase yourself a little further, you'll finally be enough. But you won't, because love cannot be earned through sacrifice. And the moment you see this, the moment you feel it in your bones, is the moment your awakening begins. And here's where Jung's insight becomes dangerous. When the empath stops playing this role, when they stop serving as the world's emotional landfill, they start to see the truth. And the truth is not pretty, it's not gentle. It's not comforting. The truth is that you were never loved for who you were. You were loved for what you gave. And the journey ahead, the one Jung called individuation, requires you to step into the most terrifying question of all. Who am I when I stop pleasing? Every empath has a breaking point. You can only smile through pain for so long. You can only say yes when you mean no so many times. You can only carry other people's storms in your body until something snaps. And when it snaps, it feels like collapse. You wake up one day, and you're tired in a way sleep doesn't fix. Your nervous system feels like it's on fire. Every social interaction leaves you drained. Guilt presses on your chest for simply having needs. This is the slow death of the false self. The persona Jung described the mask we wear to be accepted. For empaths, that mask is always the same. The nice one, the reliable one, the one who never complains, the one who never says no. But Jung warned, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. And when the mask starts to fall, that terror begins. At first, it shows up as unease, a strange heaviness when you agree to something you don't want, a fatigue that no amount of rest repairs, a sense of betrayal, though no one has betrayed you but yourself. Then come the dreams. Jung believed the unconscious speaks in images, and empaths at the breaking point report the same symbols again and again: drowning in water, running through collapsing houses, being chased by faceless crowds. The house is the false identity you built to keep others comfortable. The drowning is the collapse of your boundaries. The faceless crowd is the weight of all the roles you've played just to be accepted. These are not random nightmares. They are messages. The unconscious is screaming, this life is unsustainable. And so the questions begin. Questions that terrify and liberate all at once. Who am I when no one is looking? Who am I if I am not needed? What remains when I stop giving? At first, the answer is silence, emptiness, a void. Because when you've built your identity on pleasing others, the absence of that role feels like death. And in a way, it is the death of the false self. But Jung revealed that this death is not the end. It is the doorway to individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are. He called it the collision with the unconscious. That shocking recognition that your entire life has been built on a lie, and once you see the lie, you can't unsee it. This is the breaking point. It feels like losing your mind. It feels like losing your life. But in truth, it is losing only the mask that kept you small. And what waits on the other side is the most unexpected emotion of all: rage. This may shock you. But the empath does not awaken with forgiveness. They awaken with rage, because once you stop pleasing everyone, you finally see it. You see the manipulation. You see the exploitation. You see how your gentleness was used, how your silence was taken as agreement, how your availability was treated like obligation. And this rage is not toxic. It is sacred. Jung wrote, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. For the empath, that darkness is not evil. It is the anger they buried to survive, the selfishness they disowned, the voice they silenced. For the first time, you feel it rise. And it terrifies you because, for someone who has built their identity on peacekeeping, the emergence of anger feels like violence. But it isn't. It's protection. This is not cruelty. It is self-love in its most primal form. The fire that burns away the cords of codependency. The voice that finally says, no more. The shadow is here. Jung discovered that every person carries a shadow, the parts of ourselves we've rejected, denied, or projected onto others. And in the empath's shadow lies something no one expects: pure, undiluted rage. The shadow whispers, I am your unmet need. I am your stolen boundaries. I am the scream you swallowed so others could stay comfortable. And Jung insisted, do not run from the shadow. Do not fear it. Fear the life you lived without it. Because here's the truth. wholeness is impossible without reclamation. And for the empath, reclamation begins with anger. Not the kind of anger that destroys, the kind of anger that clarifies, the kind that makes you say no without apologizing, the kind that allows you to protect your time, your energy, your soul. And when this anger is integrated, something extraordinary happens. You don't become cruel. You become consciously selective. You begin to see manipulation tactics that were invisible before. You recognize emotional vampires. You spot the difference between genuine need and manufactured crisis. This isn't cynicism. It's clarity. The empath who awakens to their shadow doesn't lose their compassion. They expand it. They finally include themselves in it. And this is where the journey of individuation becomes unstoppable. Because once you reclaim your shadow, once you touch that sacred rage, you will never again confuse self-betrayal with love. You will never again believe the lie that kindness means erasing yourself. And you will never again abandon your own soul just to keep someone else comfortable. This is the beginning of true power. So how do you know if you're awakening? How do you know if you've crossed the breaking point and stepped into something deeper? Jung left us a map. He called it individuation, the path towards psychological sovereignty. And for empaths, it shows up in 8 unmistakable signs. Let's walk through them one by one. The first sign is the energy shift. For most of your life, your energy has flowed outward. You gave, you absorbed, you managed. You left every interaction drained. But when awakening begins, something reverses. The current flows back toward you. Suddenly, you notice you have energy left after conversations. You don't feel like collapsing after being around people. And most importantly, you stop feeling guilty for holding on to that energy. Jung observed this reversal in his patients. When people stop unconsciously giving away their life force, they suddenly have vitality for themselves. That is the first undeniable sign that something has changed. The second sign is the mask falls away. Jung called it the death of the persona, the social mask we wear to fit in. For empaths, that mask is always the same. The nice one. The helpful one. The one who never says no. But when individuation begins, that mask becomes impossible to maintain. You start saying what you actually think. You admit when you're tired. You stop pretending to have endless patience. And it terrifies the people who relied on your self-erasure. Jung warned, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. That's what's happening here. Self-acceptance begins to matter more than social acceptance. The third sign is projection recall. Empaths are masters at projecting their own depth, their own sensitivity, onto people who don't actually have it. You've seen potential in people who only showed you patterns. You've excused bad behavior because you believed everyone was secretly good inside. But awakening rips off that filter. You stop seeing potential. You start seeing reality. Jung wrote, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. And when you stop projecting, you realize that your irritation with selfishness was really your own suppressed need for healthy selfishness. The fourth sign is boundaries become sacred. This one is life-changing. Before, saying no felt like a crime. You felt compelled to explain, to justify, to apologize. But now, boundaries stop being negotiable. You can say no with a calm tone and no further explanation. And here's the key. You don't feel guilty afterward. You recognize that people who get angry at your boundaries were simply benefiting from your lack of them. Jung described this as individual integrity, the foundation of an authentic self. For the empath, it's the birth of what I call sacred selfishness. The realization that caring for yourself is not just allowed, it's required. The fifth sign is the disappearance of guilt. For years, guilt has been your constant companion. Guilt for needing rest. Guilt for disappointing someone. Guilt for not being endlessly available. But here's the truth. That guilt was never yours. It was a weapon others used to keep you compliant. And when you integrate your shadow, when you stop rejecting parts of yourself, that guilt evaporates. Jung explained that integrating the shadow dissolves the compulsions that keep us trapped. Suddenly, when someone accuses you of changing, you don't rush to reassure them. You think, yes, I have changed. That's the point. The sixth sign is authenticity over approval. This is huge. Before, you bent yourself into shapes to keep everyone happy. You agreed when you didn't. You laughed at jokes that weren't funny. You performed emotions you didn't feel. But individuation flips the script. You stop performing. You start choosing authenticity, even when it costs you relationships. And here's the paradox. When you stop trying to be liked, you become magnetic to the right people. The ones who resonate with your truth find you. The ones who only wanted the performance leave. And that's exactly as it should be. The seventh sign is the healer heals themselves. Jung wrote about the archetype of the wounded healer, the person who helps others to avoid their own pain. Empaths embody this perfectly. You've spent years tending to everyone else while neglecting your own wounds. But during awakening, that energy turns inward. You ask, what do I need? You care for your inner child. You realize you can't pour from an empty cup. And you stop trying. You give yourself the same love you've been desperate to give away. This is when true healing begins. And the eighth sign is conscious connection. Jung described it as the ability to relate without losing yourself. For empaths, this is revolutionary. You can now feel for someone without taking on their emotions. You can love without needing to rescue. You can connect without dissolving. Relationships stop being one-sided. You attract people who respect your boundaries. You create connections based on mutual respect, not exploitation. You can finally say, I see you, but I don't need you. But let's be clear, this awakening is not gentle. Jung called it the night sea journey, a descent into darkness before rebirth. For empaths, this phase feels like death, and in many ways, it island. It's the death of the false self built around pleasing others. You may lose friends who only loved the version of you that served them. You may feel a deep loneliness as you learn to sit with yourself for the first time. But in that stillness, you begin to hear something miraculous. Your own voice, whispering words you forgot how to say. I'm tired. I need. I matter. And when that voice returns, everything changes. These are the 8 signs that you are awakening. If you recognize them in yourself, you're not just changing, you're individuating. You're becoming sovereign. And once this process begins, there is no going back. When an empath awakens, the world around them shifts, and the first thing that begins to crumble is their relationships. For years, you've surrounded yourself with people who were drawn not to your true self, but to your usefulness. Jung described this shift as the differentiation between genuine love and neurotic attachment. Genuine love accepts you as you are. Neurotic attachment demands you play a role, and when you stop playing that role, the sorting begins. Narcissists, energy vampires, manipulators, drama addicts. These people sense the change before you even say a word. They realize you're no longer available as their emotional sponge, and so they panic. Some will guilt you. Some will accuse you of being cold, distant, or selfish. But here's the truth. It's not selfishness. It's sovereignty. This is not loss. This is sorting. The people who truly love you will adapt to your boundaries. They'll celebrate your growth, even if it challenges them. But the ones who only love the mask will fall away. They were never loving you. They were loving the service you provided. And yes, it hurts. You may grieve relationships you thought were real. You may feel waves of loneliness. But understand this. Those who leave are clearing space for those who can meet you as you are. Your awakening purges the false to make room for the true. And as Jung taught, individuation always changes relationships. Some deepen, others dissolve. This is not punishment, it's alignment. So when the people who exploited your kindness disappear, let them go. When the ones who only stayed for your self-erasure leave, bless them. Their exit is not your failure, it is your freedom. Because now you're finally learning that connection without authenticity is not love, it's bondage. And you were never meant to be bound. But the purge doesn't just happen in your relationships. It happens in your body. Years of people-pleasing leave scars, not only on the psyche but on the nervous system. Jung was one of the first to recognize the connection between mind and body. And empaths live this truth every day. Think about it. Decades of absorbing stress that wasn't yours. Carrying guilt that never belonged to you. Holding rage you weren't allowed to express. What happens to all that energy? It doesn't just vanish. It buries itself in your body. That's why so many empaths live with chronic fatigue, anxiety, digestive issues, autoimmune problems. Your body has been functioning as the landfill for everyone else's emotional waste. Your immune system, your gut, your nerves. They've all been working overtime. This isn't weakness. It's protest. Your body has been screaming, I can't carry this anymore. And when you awaken, when you stop absorbing, when you stop leaking energy, something miraculous happens. The body begins to heal. You notice your breath deepen, your shoulders relax, your jaw unclenches. Sleep comes easier. Pain starts to fade. Slowly, your body comes back online, not as a servant to everyone else's chaos, but as the sacred home of your own soul. You start eating differently, moving differently, speaking differently. Not to perform, not to please, but because your body is no longer hijacked. And this is what Jung meant when he taught that psychological healing and physical healing are inseparable. When you reclaim your energy, your body responds. Your nervous system, once coiled like a spring, begins to unwind. Your body remembers safety, and in that safety, life returns. This is the body's way of telling you, you were never meant to carry the world. You were meant to carry yourself. For the empath, the greatest transformation is this: shifting from pleaser to sovereign. Pleasing feels safe. Sovereignty feels dangerous. Because sovereignty means you no longer define yourself by what others think. You no longer live as a reflection of their needs. You become whole. Jung made a crucial distinction here. He wrote about healthy selfishness versus unhealthy selfishness. Unhealthy selfishness exploits others. Healthy selfishness takes responsibility for your own life, your own happiness, your own boundaries. And this is what Sovereignty Island. It's not arrogance. It's alignment. It's knowing where you end and another begins. It's giving from overflow, not depletion. It's helping from inspiration, not guilt. Think about the old way. You gave until you collapsed. You smiled until your face hurt. You absorbed until your body screamed. And you believed that was love, but it wasn't. It was self-abandonment, disguised as compassion. Sovereignty flips everything. You realize that saying no isn't cruelty, it's clarity. That prioritizing your needs isn't betrayal, it's integrity. That self-care isn't indulgence, it's survival. And when you live from this place, your relationships transform. You no longer attract people who want to consume you. You attract people who respect you. You stop being the easy target for manipulation. You stop being the endless well of emotional labor. You become magnetic. Not because you're trying to be liked, but because you are rooted in your truth. This is the sovereign empath. Sensitive, but boundaried. Caring, but discerning. Open, but not exposed. And once you taste sovereignty, you will never again return to the role of the pleaser, because you understand the cost. The cost was your life. Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." Sovereignty is that privilege. It is the shift from survival to selfhood, from being everyone's caretaker to being your own authority. And this shift is not just personal, it's revolutionary. Because every time one empath claims sovereignty, the entire system built on their sacrifice begins to crack. But sovereignty is only part of the story. Deep inside, every empath lies something older, something raw, something most have forgotten. Jung called it individuation, the integration of all the parts of ourselves we've disowned. And in the empath, one of those forgotten parts is the wild self. The wild self is not nice. It does not apologize for existing. It does not seek approval. It pulses with primal knowing. It is unapologetic, untamed, alive. For years, you buried it under politeness and performance. You thought being agreeable would keep you safe. But safety came at the price of authenticity. And when you awaken, the wild self rises. It says, I don't exist to be chosen. I don't need permission to take up space. I am not here to be nice. I am here to be true. This is where empathy transforms. No longer the soft, endless giving that drained you. Now it becomes fierce empathy, boundaried compassion, the kind of empathy that says, I feel you, but I will not abandon me. And this is what the world truly needs. Not more nice empaths who destroy themselves for harmony, but awakened empaths who love fiercely, with clarity, with boundaries intact. This is the return of your wildness. And it is the beginning of your freedom. When the empath stops pleasing, something remarkable happens. They don't lose their sensitivity. They learn to direct it. This is when the empath evolves into what I call the oracle. No longer a sponge for the world's pain, but a mirror of truth. As an oracle, you don't absorb every emotion around you. You perceive them. You don't rescue others from their chaos. You see through it. You don't drown in other people's storms. You forecast them with clarity and distance. Jung called this authentic service, helping from wholeness rather than woundedness. And this is what the oracle embodies. You no longer heal others to avoid your own pain. You offer from overflow, from alignment. Your presence alone becomes medicine. Not because you fix people, but because when you stand fully in yourself, others remember they can do the same. This is the archetype of the awakened empath. Not the martyr, not the sponge, but the oracle. The one who feels not to please, but to perceive. The one who loves not to be loved, but because they are love. And once this archetype is activated, there is no return to the old roles. You've seen behind the curtain. You know the truth of your power, and the world feels it too. Here's the final revelation. You were never broken. You were breaking open. Your sensitivity was never weakness. It was your compass. Your boundaries were never selfishness. They were your liberation. Your rage was never dangerous. It was your sacred fire. This is what Jung dedicated his life to showing us. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And for the empath, becoming who you truly are means stepping out of the role of caretaker, out of the prison of pleasing, and into the fullness of your sovereign self. It means no longer confusing attachment with love, no longer mistaking intensity for intimacy, no longer abandoning yourself to keep the peace. It means looking in the mirror and finally seeing the cost of always being kind and deciding that cost is too high. It means daring to lose relationships that depended on your erasure, daring to sit in silence until your own voice returns, daring to live not as the reflection of others, but as the revelation of yourself. And when you do, everything changes. Your energy shifts, your body heals, your relationships purify, your presence transforms. You stop orbiting around others' needs. They begin to orbit around your authenticity, not because you demand it, but because truth has gravity. This is individuation. This is sovereignty. This is the empath reborn. So now I ask you, are you ready to stop pleasing and start seeing? Are you ready to reclaim your shadow, your voice, your sovereignty? If you recognize yourself in this journey, write it in the comments right now. My breaking point became my breakthrough, because when one empath awakens, it gives permission for countless others to do the same. And the world doesn't need more depleted empaths. It needs conscious ones. Empaths who feel everything but absorb nothing. Empaths who give from overflow, not depletion. Empaths who love without losing themselves. That empath is you. So if this spoke to you, make sure you subscribe for more and share this with someone who needs to hear it today. Because your awakening is not just personal, it's revolutionary, and Jung would be proud.